Would you sit down? Not to trivialise the occasion, but as I heard the words of the first reading, I glanced up at the gallery. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Do you need more of it? Or are you content? There's dispute in the gallery. They're in darkness, but that works. It's that kind of night. I had a disconcerting experience last week. It was a disconcerting week altogether, but that's for another time. I walked into the parish office next door, and there was a small parcel in my tray. It was wrapped in bubble wrap, and this note was pinned upon it. This is the real note. It said, "Not to be opened until Christmas." And I thought, how lovely. Somebody's left me an early Christmas present. And so I took the small bubble wrap parcel home and placed it beneath the Christmas tree. And then the other day, my colleague said to me, "Have you found Jesus?" Which I thought, after 23 years as a priest, was actually quite a challenge. Mystified, I explored the question. And she said, "No, he was in a piece of bubble wrap in your tray, waiting for Christmas Eve." So rather shamefacedly, I went home. And this is what I found. And this figure, if you like, in likeness of the Christ child, is where the service began, placing him in the crib in the Lady Chapel, which will stay there now for the next 40 days and 40 nights. Did you find Jesus? I found him in a piece of bubble wrap. Nights such as this invite our memories and imaginations to bring together the childhood magic of Christmas, presents around the tree, whether it's Jesus inside or not, frankly, and our own memories of our journeys to Bethlehem. And the question this child asks me, and I invite you to ask yourselves, is if tonight you had been invited to come dressed as the person in the Christmas story you most identified with, how would you have dressed? How would you have dressed? If you'd been invited to come as the person in the Christmas story you most identified with, how would you have dressed? And of course my first instinct, and I'm sure yours, is we want to be one of the big characters, yes? We want to be Joseph or Mary or maybe the Christ child. Is that allowed? It's not very clear, is it? What strange magic and mystery meets here? If I came as a dumb animal, a cow, an ox, a pantomime cow, as appeared at this afternoon's crib service, with a degree of comedy, it has to be said. The rear end of that pantomime cow is here this evening, but feeling the bruises of that experience. There is a lovely medieval piece of nonsense which I identify with deeply, that claims that at the moment Mary gave birth to Jesus, a cat gave birth to a litter of kittens in the stable. It seems to be highly unlikely, indeed complete nonsense. But I wouldn't have minded being that cat, watching from a distance and licking myself clean in the corner. But maybe more seriously, could I be a shepherd? The shepherds in the Christmas story are glamorized, I fear, when in fact they're smelly, nasty and deceitful. That's why in the account we've just heard from Luke, Luke talks so much about that. Luke, who speaks of Jesus as the friend of our human need, as the one who knows better than ourselves what it means to be human, in all its glory and all its tragedy, therefore inevitably tells us that the first visitors to the Christmas crib were among the least of the earth. If I were a shepherd, says the hymn, I would bring a lamb. Well, that's not what Luke's saying. He isn't interested in lambs, frankly. He's interested in the shepherds who come in their weakness, their need, their frailty, the fact they're despised, the fact they live on the hills and weren't going into the towns. So yes, I want to approach the crib as a shepherd, because the shepherd tells me of my frailty, my need, my brokenness, the wounds and burdens that I bring to this Christ child this Christmas. And they may be different wounds and burdens than the ones I brought last year, and they'll be different again next. But how crucial a journey that is. This Lord of the universe, this child in the manger, this God for us revealed in vulnerability and tininess, is the one in the confidence of this Christmas night who bears our burdens, who knows what it is to be us in our greatest times and our least, and leads us into glory. And what if I come as a wise man? A wise person, in these gender-neutral times. Well, then I come bearing gifts. But what do the gifts signify and who are they for? The gifts I invite you to bring, if you're coming tonight to meet the infant king as a wise man, are the gifts of all the good things in your life, but also recognizing their shadow side. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold, the wealth of the nations. Frankincense, the offering of prayer and praise and perfume. Myrrh, the third gift, is about anointing people for their burial. And so even the wise men, I nearly said kings, dear me, even the wise people who bring these gifts bring paradoxical gifts that speak of glory and of mercy, of destiny and of need. So if I were a wise man, I would do my part, which is a big part, of taking all that's me and placing it before this child. Become a man on earth for me. And what if I dared to be Joseph? The stranger in the story, really. Joseph, we assume he's an old man simply because he disappears early. Maybe he was just an errant husband. We know virtually nothing of him, except that he sought to care for his young bride on the journey. And it's almost impossible to speculate about the gifts that Joseph would bring. In the crib service this afternoon, I was struck we had 15 Marys, but only 3 Josephs. Highly improper, I know, but that's how it had to be. Because Joseph's a very tricky character to get our head round. And yet the gifts I suspect he brings to the infant king are doubt, puzzlement, insecurity, nervousness, indeed all those anxieties of a new father, barely knowing his wife in this context, and having no idea where this strange road, accompanied by angels and bizarre signs, is going to lead him. And if I come to the crib as Mary, do I come fearful? Yes, no doubt. Historians would suggest that Mary is 13 or 14 years old. But do I come confident and full of hope? Yes, because what we know of Mary is this extraordinary sense of assurance. She knows ultimately that this bizarre journey she's on is a journey of promise that leads ultimately to hope. It is quite extraordinary when we know the end of the story, that of course she will stand beneath the cross of her son and have to reckon with his dying. But even there, she manages to speak of hope and possibility. And if I dare to come to the crib as the Christ child, I can barely contemplate what that might mean, except to know that that is somehow the heart of the Christmas miracle. One of the great early Christians said, God became a human being so that human beings might become God. It sounds profoundly blasphemous, maybe, to us. But that's what this child is all about. That's the destiny of which he speaks. That through the birth of God in Bethlehem, a road of glory opens that changes the very nature of human hope. Which is why, in the end, I come tonight to the Christmas crib with my burdens and joys from the last year, with my sorrows and aspirations, with the rough stuff of my own humanity, not as a dumb beast or even a pantomime cow, not as a shepherd, not as a wise man, certainly not that, not as Joseph, not as Mary, not as the Christ child. I come as myself. Because that is how Jesus takes us. Come as you are, he says. Come as you are to the Christmas crib. And know that this God, revealed in the frailty of our flesh, accepts us as we are, loves us as we are, knows our wounds, our journeys, and our fears better than we do ourselves, and loves us for them, loves us for our need, even if we cannot name it, and in that name speaks a resounding word of glory and hope, that whatever burdens we bring, whatever hopes we bring, whatever needs we know deep in our breaking hearts, and whatever love and community accompanies us, Christ loves us there, knows us there, and is present in it all. Because this miracle of God's love is not the birth of a child 2,000 years ago, but his birth in us today. And is it true, said Betjeman, this most tremendous tale of all, that God was man in Palestine and lives today in bread and wine?